A tropical storm is likely to develop in this area soon. We'll look at how strong it's likely to get and where it might be going. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi, my friends. Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather. Hey, it's great to see you for the latest video. Hope you're doing well. Coming up in this video, got all the newest information on Invest 98L. What's been happening with the disturbance on this Monday. We'll talk about the evolution of this, when it's likely to become a named storm, and just where it could be going from here in the impacts it's already bringing. As always, Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. They offer free consultation and policy reviews. It is storm season. You want them to walk you through the insurance claim process, they can do that. It's leanonmelaw.com for more information. Love to hear from the fantastic weather community. Let me know what's been happening in your area. Of course, you have a question about the forecast, you can always drop it in the comments section below. Love to hear from you guys. You just want to say hi. I appreciate that as well. All right, so what's going on with our Invest? At this point in time, it is on the precipice of developing into a tropical depression or a tropical storm. That might not happen until Tuesday or maybe early Wednesday because it's still fighting some shear. But this system is likely to develop very quickly because taking a look at things and now, analyzing this throughout the day, it continues to look better organized. It's still fighting some shear, especially on the western side. The trade winds in the far eastern Caribbean are still quite strong, but moving just a little bit farther to the west, that wind shear relaxes, and ultimately as it gets south of Hispaniola, that's what I expect it to develop. Now, it's still bringing some impacts to the eastern Caribbean today. All the numbers that you see are wind gusts in miles an hour. So the first thing I want to look at is, what's happening on this Monday across our area. We'll begin in the ABC Islands. We've had some squally weather. We've had some passing showers and a few rumbles of thunder. Winds have kicked up to 25, 30 miles an hour from time to time. It's certainly not a washout as of yet, but the weather's going to go downhill the later on this Monday and especially Tuesday and Wednesday in the ABC Islands. Now, let me be very clear. You're only going to get indirect impacts. The center of circulation is going to stay to your north. You're going to have the kind of rain and wind that the windward islands have seen over the weekend, where again, we could be dealing with some strong to severe storms. We could be dealing with some flooding locations as several inches of rain is likely to fall here as the system passes to your north. I know that there's a severe thunderstorm watch for some of the ABC Islands, including the Curacao area. We're likely to fall under flood advisories as well. Always check in with your local government and local officials. This is a picture from earlier today in Aruba looking south towards Venezuela. Captain Polly sent this in. And again, you guys can really see the moisture-laden clouds there. I call them those SLCs, those scary looking clouds, those dark bases, indicating all the rich tropical moisture which will continue to stream into the area. Again, it's still passing in nature, but there's a lot more of that that's going to try and move over the islands here, at least through Wednesday. Again, it's not here yet, at least in a consistent form, because the live look outside to Eagle Beach and Oranjestad is fantastic. If you guys don't know, we have live cameras here at Meteo Mundo to help tell the weather story. It is one of the unique things that we can bring you here at the channel, one of the exclusive content features we bring you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you like this stuff. Again, you see a little bit of the seaweed there on the old shoreline, kicking up surf conditions. They are flying the red flags at this point in time. And again, unfortunately, the beach weather the next couple days not looking great. And we're going to have to concern ourselves again with the opportunity for some flooding in time to time. I'll monitor the situation for you guys. Now look, this system has expanded again and actually built back east over the Lesser Antilles for additional rain and wind impacts on some islands on this Monday. We'll start off in Puerto Rico. The winds freshening up, really consistent, 20, 25, even 30-mile-an-hour winds for today. Aguadilla, San Juan, Ponce, Vieques, and Culebra, St. Croix, St. Thomas has had 30-mile-an-hour winds. And again, we're beginning to see some of the moisture overrun the islands at this point in time. Still just indirect impacts for now, but again, locally heavy downpours and some really breezy, squally conditions are likely in the islands at the very least over the next couple of days. It's been a little bit quieter in the Leeward Islands for today, but you get south of there, there's still been some breeze, 20 to 25, but you get south, Guadeloupe, Dominique, and Martinique, which had a 40-mile-an-hour wind gust early today as some of the showers have begun to move back in. Even a couple of rumbles of thunder. We've had relatively overcast skies. We have a flash flood watch that's still in effect for Barbados. We have an adverse weather alert number 3 still in effect for Trinidad and Tobago. Other areas under marine watches and warnings and other flood advisories. Again, check in with your local government and local officials. But the bottom line is we're not done with the impacts from 98L here in the Lesser Antilles. This is a live look outside to Corinth, St. Lucia. We have this fantastic camera to show you guys as well. It has been overcast from time to time. We've had some rain move back into the area. Again, you get into St. Lucia, it's not a complete washout day, but it's been relatively gray. We've had some passing showers and some breezy conditions from time to time. Take a look at this video Peter sent in from the south coast of Barbados. This is indicative of some of the good squalls that continue to roll across the region, hopefully winding down a bit here, but that's easily 30 to 35 mile-an-hour winds, locally higher than that. And again, some of the higher terrain areas of these islands get down to the low-lying areas, and you can see some flash flooding occur relatively quickly with several inches of rain. Now, not everyone has gotten that amount of rain, but locally, we've seen that kind of rainfall over 100 millimeters in some areas. So now let's talk about how this is going to evolve for the rest of the week. We'll start off with that development area from the Hurricane Center. We're up to a 90% chance. It is basically due west, but let me be clear about what my thoughts are about that. More than likely, until we get a true low-level center, which hasn't happened yet, but could happen very shortly, it is likely to just meander towards the west. But once we get that low-level center, then more than likely, as it begins to vertically stack itself, it's going to start to be more influenced by other features in the atmosphere, which could pull it in different directions from where you see this red, and we'll talk about that coming up. Now, the Hurricane Center is still giving the idea that it could not develop until it gets south of Jamaica or towards the west, but it's likely to develop in the shorter term south of Hispaniola. So I don't expect it to just kind of drift to the west as the only solution here. More than likely, that is what's not going to happen, as a matter of fact. If we take a look at the visible satellite imagery here, our high-res visible satellite imagery, again, just a little bit more defined, higher cloud tops, indicative of better convection, beginning to wrap around 3 quadrants of the storm. Again, we're still fighting some shear. If you look, that you have some clouds going in different directions ahead of the storm, but there's a lot of moisture-laden air. We're not worried about, if you will, the fact that it could get undercut with drier air. That would be a fantastic thing, but I don't see it happening. Unfortunately, here we're looking at more than likely a storm which is going to continue to slowly progress and evolve and become a named storm as early as Tuesday, maybe as late as Wednesday. But it's not going to surprise me if on Tuesday we get Melissa, which is the next named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. Now, I wish there was better model agreement when we go to look at all these models I'm about ready to show you. Unfortunately, even 24 hours later, because we don't have that low-level center yet, we still don't have a lot of consensus with the models. They do fall under 2 camps, if you will. The first one is scenario number 1, where by the way, most models just slowly drift this and progress it west and develop it by Wednesday. And then from there, you have 2 big splits. Scenario number 1, it goes north towards Hispaniola, maybe emerges north of there towards Turks and Caicos, some impacts for Puerto Rico and maybe even eastern Cuba and the Virgin Islands, but a quicker north turn with impacts late this week. If it continues to progress west, but probably not as far south as what the Hurricane Center has it, maybe lifting a little bit north in latitude, impacts are likely to be felt late this week, but over the weekend, because it's just traveling farther into the western side of the Caribbean, and then areas, still Hispaniola, but then Jamaica and the Cayman Islands and Cuba and potentially other areas of Quintana Roo and the Central American coastline would have to monitor the situation there. But these are the 2 camps, if you will, that the models are falling into on this Monday. So let's get into it here. Let me bring this up, drop off that red area. We'll start off with the GFS model, and we'll look at several different models for you guys here. Now, the GFS model is about the 5th day in a row that it is still showing the same solution. One thing I can tell you is that The GFS and the European, especially the GFS, have held to their solution and they have had run-to-run consistency. It's that in between the models, when we're comparing the GFS to the European, to the Google DeepMind, to the HAFS and the HMON and the HWRF, there is not a lot of consistency with these models. But let's take a look at what's happening right now with them today. Again, on the GFS, if we go back to today, you have a slowly developing system. By tomorrow, you start to wrap up a storm. It could happen tomorrow. Maybe it happens early on Wednesday, but I want you to notice how quickly the GFS takes this from a relatively sloppy system. This is going to be Wednesday early morning, and quickly develops it into a hurricane as we get into Wednesday night. So once we get the low-level center and it gets away from the stronger trade winds of the far eastern Caribbean, potential quick development is possible, okay? I don't want to say it's likely at this point in time, but several of the models do quickly develop this. And again, even though it doesn't have a long window of development opportunity, as it gets towards Hispaniola on the GFS model, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, as we get into Thursday, which is the 23rd, and then on Friday, it is a hurricane before it moves inland, okay? So that is the latest solution there. There is very high mountainous areas of Hispaniola. It is known to tear apart storms at the lower levels, and that's exactly what happens. You end up with a much broader, weaker system as it emerges into the Atlantic, but still some heavier rain for Turks and Caicos and East, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the Leeward Islands, again, with this scenario at this point in time. But that is a storm that quickly develops. So this is why I wanted to get you guys prepared, right? Again, we don't have a track yet from the Hurricane Center because we don't have a depression or a storm. But if this were to play out on the GFS, we would quickly go from a weak tropical storm to a hurricane in potentially 24 hours, and one that would be on the doorstep of the island not long after that. So we just have to start to kind of keep that in mind. Again, always check in with local government and officials for what you need to do to prepare. But based on this, we would have to watch out for the opportunity for some hurricane conditions in those islands late into the week. And again, with a quicker north turn, we don't have as much prep time because of this. So looking at the sustained winds from the GFS model, again, if I take you to just tomorrow, right, we start to see a potentially wrapped storm. Now, the whites are 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds. So by tomorrow afternoon, the GFS basically has us with a tropical storm. But it gets better organized through Tuesday evening and then into Wednesday morning. And then just throughout the day, Wednesday, it gets strong, and it gets strong in a hurry. As we get into Thursday, so this is Thursday morning, just to kind of give you an idea of what these winds could look like here. So let's just pause it right here and bring these up. Again, you are looking at hurricane sustained winds, maybe around 90 miles an hour on the GFS. These are sustained winds, not even gusts, which would be on the southern coastline of Hispaniola early on Thursday morning, right? Again, this is not the clear-cut path of this storm, and I want to be very clear about that. I wish there was better agreement so we could really refine this, but we're going to still be talking about other tracks that are much different from this. But if you do live in Hispaniola and even Puerto Rico, just a heads up as to what could be coming your way late this week. This is the ensemble members of the GFS, so you are looking at the main deterministic run. Now, obviously, as we go farther in time, they begin to kind of expand in potential tracks. But if we look at this again, development as we go through Wednesday, the ones that develop the storm quickly pull it across Hispaniola towards Turks and Caicos, southeast Bahamas, and then move it away. There is another cluster of the GFS ensembles which more slowly develops the storm, right? It takes a little bit longer, like late Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend, and then pulls it farther west towards Jamaica and Cuba. So again, camp number one with the GFS is over here, but by Friday you get more development and into the weekend closer to Jamaica and Cuba. So the GFS does have some spread on the ensemble members, but we'll take a look at those plots coming up, and the majority of them are still over the areas that I first mentioned. This is the European ensemble members, okay? This was a model that has been farther west relative to the GFS, but starting yesterday had become pulled back a little bit farther to the east. Well, guess what? Now, the GFS and the European model are in agreement, if the storm develops quickly, that you have an opportunity for this to get pulled almost due north, even north-northeast, back over Hispaniola into the Western Caribbean, Western Atlantic. But then you also have, again, another cluster from the ensemble members of the European model, which are slower and farther west and deeper into the Western Caribbean, potentially bringing more direct impacts to places like Jamaica down the road. And again, note that one thing I'm concerned about on what I showed you with the GFS deterministic, the ensemble members of the GFS and the European, is that some of these members are very strong, with some pretty strong hurricanes developing here late this week and into early part of the weekend. This is the HAFS A model. So this is one of those high resolution models of Invest 98L. So development Tuesday, Wednesday, here's Hispaniola. Watch it get up right towards the peninsula of Haiti, stall, and then push back west. This is the first time that I've seen this, right, on the models so far, that you have a developing storm on the HAFS A that gets right to the doorstep of Hispaniola, stops, and then actually wants to drift back north and west. It's an interesting scenario. To show you guys the maximum winds, look at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Those are sustained winds. So you get a tropical storm late Tuesday, early Wednesday. You get a hurricane as we get into Thursday. Winds could touch 100 miles an hour from time to time. And then it pushes back west. But unfortunately, those last couple of frames have it becoming a major hurricane. But so I looked at this first and I said, how plausible is that, right? Well, let me show you the HWRF model. The HWRF model is going to show you about the same track as the HAFS A. Here's Hispaniola, right? And it's going to go right over Haiti Thursday into Friday into Turks and Caicos as a much more disorganized storm, with the lower levels being ripped apart a bit. Now, it doesn't mean it can't try and regenerate a bit over Turks and Caicos, but this shows you that the HAFS A and B, by the way, HAFS A and B were exactly the same, and the HWRF are pulling the storm north just like the GFS is at this point in time, except the HWRF, like the GFS, is then north of Hispaniola rather than stalling it out. As far as intensity goes, again, you get yourself a hurricane before it moves over Haiti and the Dominican Republic, weakens substantially over the mountainous island, and then tries to regenerate a little bit as it gets back towards Turks and Caicos, but as a tropical storm at that point in time. All right, this is the HMON model. Now, what's the HMON model doing, right? Another high-resolution hurricane model. Well, again, you have a little bit slower development on the HMON. Doesn't look as impressive Wednesday, but by Thursday, it does begin to wrap up. But again, just overall more slow evolution. And because of the slower evolution, it's tugged farther west. And I think that's what I'm trying to, impart here, is that quicker development is likely to pull the storm north based on the model information I'm seeing today. Slower development, we're likely to go a little bit farther west in the Caribbean. So now guess what? Friday and into the weekend, now Jamaica is into play on the HMON model. This is one of the farther west ones, but it certainly can't be discounted. And as far as intensity goes, again, it's a little bit sloppier system here. It's still a tropical storm by Wednesday, but it's fighting a little bit more here, and it does slowly get stronger, but at least the latest run of the HMON, by Saturday afternoon, it never becomes a hurricane on the HMON. But again, it heads a little bit closer to Jamaica based on that model information. This is the Google DeepMind, okay? This is Wednesday. All of the dots would be the initial position of what's going to be Melissa, right? Notice how they're all very clustered. Again, a lot of the models are in agreement over the next 24 to 48 hours about where this is going to end up being. But even on the Google DeepMind, which has been a fantastic model this hurricane season, the ensemble solutions are still all over the place. I mean, it is like true spaghetti out there. You have some of them over the Dominican Republic and Haiti. You have some tracking west towards Jamaica. You have some even farther south than that, headed potentially into the northwest sides of the Caribbean, maybe closer to Central America and the Yucatan, or some of them recurving back up towards the Cayman Islands and Cuba. The bottom line is there is no agreement even with the Google DeepMind model. The darker blue dashed line that you see is just the ensemble average. So if you kind of take the average of all the tracks, where would the center be? It doesn't mean that this is the most likely scenario, but notice how there's a lot of slow movement with the Google DeepMind, where it could be sitting over extremely warm temperatures in the Caribbean, which are running nearly 30 degrees Celsius in a lot of locations, mid and upper 20s, 30 degrees Celsius, mid and upper 80s Fahrenheit throughout this entire area, and it's a really deep layer of very warm water as well. So when we look at the GFS tracks of the ensemble members as kind of spaghetti plots here, your black squares are going to be the mean average, just like you saw on the Google. And again, there's more consensus with the GFS. There are some that pull it farther west, but the majority have this developing south of Hispaniola, then getting pulled back over the island and then into the Atlantic near Turks and Caicos, and ultimately pulling away from the Bahamas and the United States East Coast. But quick development with some of the GFS ensembles. The European tracks are farther west overall. Right, you saw from the ensemble members that some of them, again, were over Haiti, but there's a little bit more tug west overall with the European models. Remember, some of them were way down here, and that's borne out by these spaghetti plots. So there's slightly better agreement with the models today, but there's not much. I wish there was much better consensus so that we could have a clearer focus, but we still have to watch and wait until we get a true center, and then more than likely these models will have a better handle on the atmospheric conditions that could ultimately pull the storm one way or another. Again, a lot of the models make it a tropical storm, so we're very likely to get Melissa, and several of them, including the H-worst and the HAFs A and B, which I showed you, make this into a hurricane. We'll have to see how it plays out. Other ensemble members of the GFS and the European do the same. So here's what you need to know. 98L is getting better organized, and we're likely going to get a tropical storm anytime Tuesday or at the latest on Wednesday based on everything that I've seen so far. Unfortunately, the models continue to struggle with the track. That's just something that has not had a good consistency across the models so far. Some models do develop this into a hurricane. So if you do live across the Caribbean, it is something you need to just make sure you're aware of as we move through the rest of the week. Rain and wind impacts are likely for the ABC Islands, but not direct impacts. However, if you live, I know there's a lot of areas, guys, but this is how it is. Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, and even most of Central America and the Yucatan, as you know, just monitor in Central America and the Yucatan, but all the other islands that I mentioned, just make sure that you're really checking in very carefully with how this storm is going to evolve. I do believe that by tomorrow, Wednesday at the latest, we're going to have a much better idea of exactly where this might be tracking. Now, we could still see a storm that really gets strong in a hurry, and that might be borne out by Wednesday or Thursday. But as far as getting a track and a better idea, I think that's hopefully likely coming in the next day or two. But these areas need to really monitor for potential tropical storm or even hurricane impacts down the road. Friends, as always, I appreciate you guys taking a quick second, hitting that like button for me. We got more in the video to go, I promise you that. But if you want these latest tropical updates and your forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, you have found your home. Thanks for subscribing to the channel, sharing this with your family and friends. Appreciate those who are members. 2 tiers, you want to support the channel in a simple way. That is the join button. For 99 cents a month, you can become a supporter. For $2.99 a month, you can become a Team MM member, where you get access 2 exclusive member shorts. I grab my phone, give you guys some quick video updates, my thoughts kind of behind the scenes in between these video updates. Now, you guys know I'm going to keep you updated with this throughout the week, right? We're going to be calm. We're going to be cool. We're going to be collected about it. We're going to, you know, as time evolves, we're going to figure out what's going to be happening with this thing, and we'll talk about where these impacts might be going. But because we don't have a great feel for it yet, you know, we have to put an alert for these areas just to continue to monitor the situation. You're still always getting prepared, right? You're always getting prepared. But as far as being in action mode of yet, you know, let's just wait and see. Always check in with local government and local officials. That is your responsibility for anything that you might need to do on the local level. But it's always great to be prepared as a storm is so close to home, if you will. So let's talk about what's going to be happening across the rest of the area here. Now, look, we continue to see some very active weather out west. There is still rich, deep tropical moisture from our monsoon trough and has led to numerous storms again today, especially over the central and the western sides of Jamaica, from the Mandeville area back down towards Black River and Treasure Beach, trying to get a couple of thunderstorms near Sav Lamar. Local Locally, heavy downpours are likely for my friends in Jamaica again. You guys live there, please let me know in the comments section below what's been happening in your area for today. Scattered showers and a few thunderstorms developing over the Cayman Islands at the hour. Again, they're spotty, but they're out there. Same situation over Cuba. Nothing is extremely concentrated till you get to the coastline of Honduras and then back down closer to the monsoon trough. Heavy rain and storms for Panama and Costa Rica. Thunderstorms are developing at the hour on the eastern sides of Quintana Roo, from Cancun and Cosmo back down towards Tulum. Not going to rule out a scattered shower over portions of Belize and the Bay Islands of Honduras. Again, a lot of moisture-laden air, very efficiently squeezing it out. One area it's been nice to not see as much rain today is the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Some of the flood advisories have gone away. Now, in the last couple of hours, thunderstorms are redeveloping at the hour over Santo Domingo. Out east towards San Pedro de Macorís and La Romana. Punta Cana has had a couple of thunderstorms over the Mona Passage. And again, all of this activity is just lifting north. So even though there's been a break in the action across the DR for today, I'm not expecting it to last very long. Again, all of this moisture lifting up from 98L, which is to be Melissa, should continue to inundate the area. Not going to rule out a couple of scattered showers, an isolated thunderstorm for the southeast side of the Bahamas into Turks and Caicos. And then we're going to see a few isolated storms near a frontal boundary over portions of the northern Bahamas. Today, we've had a couple of thunderstorms over places like Grand Bahama, Freeport, Lucaya, the Abacos, Walker's Key, Nassau, New Providence, towards Andros and Bimini as well. So let's get into the forecast. I haven't mentioned the rainfall totals as of yet, and we're going to do that coming up here in just a second. But to bring it back home, and let me just switch over to the reflect. I know you guys see the reflectivity. I'm switching back over to a model here. To bring it back home to the areas that aren't going to be directly impacted by this, and I got to be honest, it's not a ton, right, over the next few days, but far west in the Bahamas, we're still going to see at least some decent rain chances here, right? So the Yucatan, and Belize and Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua, scattered showers, a few rumbles of thunder, heavier rain, some flooding possibilities for portions of Costa Rica and Panama. Just a very wet forecast, scattered showers, heavier downpours from time to time for the Cayman Islands and Jamaica. Obviously, Jamaica, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on what's going to be evolving here from 98L/Melissa. And then anywhere east of there, potential direct impact. Now, even the Windward Islands are likely to get a break in the action, but the central Western Antilles and the northern side of the Antilles up towards the Leeward Islands, if the GFS scenario plays out, all that moisture-laden air is going to flow back east, and you guys could get back into some heavier rain. But obviously, the farther west that you live, the higher the chance, if you will, for that potential, including the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and obviously the Dominican Republic and Haiti as well. So this is what it looks like on the European rainfall totals. Again, the Euro is slower, so we have a couple of days where it sits out in the open waters of the Caribbean, and that's good news, because on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, the European model has 52 inches of rain developing from what is to become Melissa. Now that just shows you how moisture-laden the atmosphere is going to be, right? But to get more than 10 inches of rain along the path, depending on the speed, which is 250 millimeters in some locations, it's not out of the question. Now, obviously, the track is ultra dependent on where the heaviest rain goes, but obviously the rain is going to be a much more widespread impact than what the wind impacts could be, right? Because the rain is going to be much more widespread out from the center of circulation, several hundred miles wide, which could stretch well off towards the east, which could bring over 6 inches of rain or higher in some areas. Obviously, boaters need to continue to be very cautious. Again, this model is based off the GFS, so you're going to see it move over Hispaniola and into the western Atlantic basin. So we would really churn up the surf and sea conditions for the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, portions of Puerto Rico. Look, even Jamaica would get into the act here. And you're looking at well over double-digit significant wave heights. Anywhere in yellow is above 10. And the interesting thing is on the GFS model, if this does play out and this moves into the western Atlantic basin, it's going to pick up some forward speed in a hurry because there's likely to be strong westerlies here. And watch how these significant wave heights go to 40 and 50 feet as it moves south and east of Bermuda. So you want to talk about another system which is going to turn up conditions there if this plays out. But regardless, in the Caribbean, we're going to start to build some double-digit wave heights beginning late Tuesday and especially into Wednesday and Thursday. Friends, as you guys know, I've got you covered. You can follow us across all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. You can always send me a picture or video, and the simplest way to do that is going to be mymediamundo@gmail.com. Look, I know it's a complicated forecast. I get that. So you have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. I'm very happy to answer those. Please remember that Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys, offering free consultation and policy reviews. They'll walk you through the insurance claim process. It's leanonmelaw.com if you would like more information. You guys know I got you covered through these video updates. We'll run our radar system live if we need to with our live cameras. I might pop on from time to time, and if we need to just go live to cover the storm in your area, you know, I'll do that. I appreciate your support. Thanks for liking and subscribing. I've got you covered, and I'll see you soon right here at Meteo Mundo.